Welcome to the Thrive Co podcast, exploring the inner side of success. I am your host, Nikki, and each week we will explore the mindset shifts, personal growth, and everyday tools that will help you to navigate ambition, manage stress, and build a life that actually feels good on the inside. Through solo episodes and honest guest conversations, we look at what it really takes to grow, change, and thrive in the modern world. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Thrive Co. Hope you're all doing well. Hope you've had a good couple of weeks since I last put out an episode. If you're listening on the Monday that this is released, I hope you've had a fantastic weekend and you're rested and recharged and ready for a new week ahead. So I missed a week again, guys. Not going to apologise, not going to explain, because I've already done that on previous episodes, and I think we know at the moment life's a bit up and down. Things are going to be slightly sporadic. It's all good. It's nothing negative. Just a new job, really busy. But I feel like when I'm recording now, it's super inspired content, because I'm not that I ever really felt pressure, but there were some weeks where I'd put something out because I knew that I needed to record to keep the continuity going. But in reality, I was pushed for time, or I put time aside to do it and then it slipped away. I had to record it at a different time. So I feel like now everything that I'm recording and putting out is like super inspired and really comes from, not that anything was inauthentic before, but it comes from a place of like real, genuine authenticity, things that I'm living through, experiences I'm having, things that I'm learning, rather than ticking a box because I know that I need an episode to go out. And I'm not going to lie, I can tell a lot of the time, unless they're really good at just doing stuff on the fly, I can tell if I listen to a podcast and it feels like a rushed episode that they've just needed to like fling out. So we're not going to be doing that around here. But anyway, what do I want to talk about this week? So this is something that has been so relevant and prevalent in my life recently. I'm literally living through it at the moment. So I thought, why not chat about it? And then I'm sure as it evolves and I find my way through it and there's different learnings and outcomes, then we can do more episodes and I can update you on it. But in essence, I have been really struggling when I've sat down to set my weekly goals on a Sunday. And then last weekend when I sat down to do a new month goals, where I sat down to look at what I wanted to achieve in August. And August is a funny one because there's different holidays in my company. There's 3 of us in my company and there's different holidays. So we're kind of picking stuff up for each other. I'm away for a bit. It's a bit of a bitty month. So that kind of plays into it. But I think in reality, when I've been sitting down to set goals, I've really struggled to feel inspired and motivated, because so much of my, I guess, identity and so much of what I was classing as motivation, but really was like stress and anxiety, was wrapped up in my business and being a business owner and achieving revenue goals and bringing in new clients. And I didn't know that. So when I've been sitting down to do the goal setting, I've just been feeling a bit of a sense of like numbness and an inability to know what I want, and a real sense of just, I don't know how else to explain it, but like a sense of kind of such overwhelming contentment with everything that I've got that I'm not like super motivated to put down goals for things that I want to achieve. And it doesn't have to have been a big life change that makes you feel like this. Sometimes you can just have gradually chipped away at something and got to where you want, and then suddenly you're like, why do I feel like I don't want anything else? Or why do I feel like I'm, not able to set goals or not able to look at the next week, month, quarter, year, whatever it might be. And it was really funny. So I was talking to my coach in my coaching group about it. And actually, I think what I can liken it to, in fact, it's almost identical to this feeling, is when I've been in relationships in the past that have been, and I mean like romantic relationships and some friendships actually, but mainly romantic, and they've been, in hindsight, very full of drama, very like up and down, lots of high and low emotions, very what you would call probably toxic. And that isn't me calling the other person toxic, that's saying that together it was a toxic combination. When I've then met my now husband, who is not like dramatic, doesn't cause me drama, has no toxicity in him at all, wouldn't know how to be toxic if he tried, it almost felt a little bit disarming. And I was like, ooh, is this going to be like a bit safe, a bit boring almost? It was effectively my nervous system being so unfamiliar with what it was being presented with in terms of like safety and love and just like that continuum of, you know, steady emotion, that I interpreted it as something negative and something that it wasn't, until I got used to the fact that, hey, this is actually really healthy and this is actually what a relationship should be like. And they should feel like your safe place, and they should feel like coming home and like your haven at the end of a busy day, or when you've got trouble going on with friendships or work or whatever else it might be, that this person is the person that you can come back to. And I hadn't had that before. I had it where the source of my angst and strife and anxiety and stress was normally my relationship. And not that I necessarily recognised it at the time, but having done all of this work and now being in like a super healthy marriage, I can now reflect and say like that was what it was. And so your nervous system will quite often seek what feels familiar to it. It's not necessarily safety in kind of the dictionary definition of the word safety, but it's safety to your nervous system because it's familiarity. So if you're used to traveling around with your family from city to city or country when you're small, being in one place might feel really stifling to you, or it might make your nervous system feel like, oh, this is really boring. And if you've been in toxic relationships or friendships, or you experience growing up in a really like argumentative and super like roller coaster of emotions household, you're going to seek that in your partnerships and in your relationship. And actually what I realized is recruitment as an industry is very emotional highs and lows if you let it be. And that is something that we're going to come back to. And it is definitely the case that I've realised. And actually being a business owner, you are going to have months and periods of real, you know, high revenue, high income, lots of clients, things are going to be going great. And then there's going to be weeks and months where you actually question if the business is going to survive and whether you've made the right decision. And for me, when I chose to take this new job on, I did question like, oh, am I going to be fulfilled? Am I going to miss running a business? Am I taking the easy option? And actually it was none of those things. But then when I came to sitting down and writing my goals, once I'd accepted this job and it was, you know, I'd started to settle into the routine and the rhythm of it, and I felt that like numbness, that emptiness, that, well, what do I now want? I did question like, is there's not the job per se, because I love it. I absolutely love what I do now, and I love the team and I love the business, and everything is exactly what I wanted. But it did make me question like, well, why do I feel like this then? Why, you know, is there something wrong for me to feel like this? For those of you that are regular listeners to the show, or maybe you know me personally, you won't have been able to get away without hearing me talk about Simprove. Simprove is a scientifically backed, water-based probiotic drink. You drink it daily and it has been scientifically proven to help with things like bloating, IBS symptoms, pain. It was actually a dietitian friend of mine that introduced it to me last year, and I honestly wouldn't be without it now. It's helped with my energy, with my bloating, it's helped with my immune system, and also things like my skin. The list is honestly endless. Now, I have got a code for you. So if you'd like to try Simprove, you can get 50%, that's a massive 50% off your first 3 month subscription by going on to simprove.com and putting in the code Nikki50. That's NIKKI50, or clicking the link in the show notes. And so actually just sitting with that and going back to the last episode that I released about living questions, rather than being like, right, what is it that's wrong? What do I need to do? Answering it, finding a solution, which is like really short-sighted, limiting thinking, those kind of, questions. And I just wanted to validate myself by being able to say, right, this is what's wrong with you and this is how you fix it. I've just kind of sat with it for the last couple of weeks and been really conscious of like, what is it? What is this feeling and why am I feeling like that? And actually, it's like the most random example, but the other night, my husband and I realised that our alarm system that's attached to the cameras that are like hardwired in our house was set. Well, it basically wasn't recording if there was like an event, if something happened, and it all came out of the fact that I'd missed a parcel. We knew that the Every guy delivered the parcel somewhere. We couldn't find it anywhere around the property. And I was like, we'll check the camera, see where he went. And then we went back to the camera and there was like no recordings. So the alarm goes off if somebody comes onto the property after a certain time, and you can log in and live record, but we didn't know why this wasn't recording. And it literally took an hour and a half of talking to AI and Googling and trying to, and, my husband was like, let's just give up and we'll just speak to the alarm company at the weekend, the camera company. And I was like, this is something that is a setting that we have set, and there has got to be, and the app, I'll be honest, it's quite confusing. Anyway, I sat for an hour and a half and worked through it. And it wasn't that night that I actually solved it. It was the next morning once I'd kind of slept on it, and I woke up like, I think I know the problem. But I would not have been able to do that when I was working for myself. Because I wouldn't have had that time in the evening because I'd have been working and thinking about work and doing things to do with the business. And B, because my head wouldn't have been able to solve a complex problem like that because of how much other shit was going on in it. Like, I just wasn't present. I wasn't here for the best part of 3.5 years. And that isn't to say that I've been a bad wife or a bad dog mum or a bad daughter or sister or friend. But so many people have said to me how much lighter and how much more like present and just more myself I feel to them since I've stopped running the business. And that isn't to say that I won't ever run a business again. I don't believe that that's the case at all. But I think for me, because it wasn't in the industry that I wanted to run a business in, I want to do more in kind of the self-development space. And there was such a pressure to make it work because it was my only source of income. The stress and the continual anxiety was ever present, and I just wasn't aware of it because it had just become the level at which I functioned. It had just become my daily kind of being and way. And being able to solve that alarm problem, that camera problem, made me realise that I suddenly have so much more spaciousness in my mind. Don't get me wrong, my days are back-to-back busy, and there's some evenings that I work, and sometimes I'll think about it at the weekend, but I haven't got that continuum pressure and anxiety. And being full in your days, or in inverted commas busy, is very different than having continuous stress and anxiety and cortisol in your body. Like, it's very, very different. If you are full and busy doing something that you enjoy, something that you feel capable of, and that you're getting well paid for, you are not in the same mindset as if you are struggling and, having to continually think about your business. Like, you're just not. And I've got friends who run businesses who can't relate to this because they're like, well, I've got a friend with a beauty business who loves what she does and it's so busy, but it's thriving. So she hasn't got that stress and anxiety and she loves it and it's her passion and her calling. I've got another who works in hair who has, taken a bit of a step back from absolutely, driving herself into the ground and makes really good money and enjoys what she does, but has found her balance. Whereas I didn't have that. I didn't have that same balance and that same passion. And so I think what became really apparent was it's not that I'm now broken or I'm unable to set goals or strive. It's just going to take a little while for me to kind of settle into this new norm or this new structure of my days and weeks and months, and actually start understanding what I want to achieve again. And maybe those goals aren't work related. Like, clearly I have work goals that I set with my team, things that we need to do from a revenue perspective, but because I'm not totally in control of those 100%, they're not my personal goals. I have things that I need to do within that to help the team hit the goals, but they're not the things that I would set at the start of the month. I might say, like, we need to close this search or get this process into a good place or turn this client around, but it's not the same feeling that I had when it was like, need to make 20k revenue. And so now for me, it's less about like actual goals and objectives are around, tangible things. Yes, I've got fitness goals. I've got, a steps goal every month. I've got the amount of times I want to go to the gym. Excuse me. I've got things around like wanting to do like 1 or 2 spiritual classes to just, keep that sort of part of my life, really current and really alive. But actually, thinking about it now, I've got so much more spaciousness to set goals around like who I want to become, like what do I want to be known for, what sort of coach and leader do I want to be, what sort of friend do I want to be, what sort of wife and daughter do I want to be, what sort of sister do I want to be, and how do I want to support my brother and my sister-in-law through the tough time that they're going through. Those sorts of goals are things that I have not had the headspace to really think about in the last few years. And it's such a weird feeling. And when people have said in the past about their identity being tied into work, I've kind of not really got it, because I've been in the headspace of like, well, yeah, your work is like so much of what you do, and why would your identity not be in that? But actually, now that I've moved away from owning my own business, I can really see that I can add so much value, and I can be such a, valuable professional for the business that I work for and for my clients and for the candidates. And I can do absolutely everything that I can within my power to be that leader in that space. But actually, it doesn't define who I am anymore. It does not define, like, if I drop the ball on something at work, I'm not going to feel like a complete failure in my life, because A, I've got a team and I've got support around me, and B, I'm not the only one carrying that through. It's not my entire business and therefore not my entire identity. And I'd not seen that is what I'd sort of slipped into in the last few years. So it's actually been so interesting to take a step back and be like, actually, what am I becoming? Who am I becoming? And for me, it's really about now, like, those bigger questions that I just asked, like, what questions do I want to ask of the people around me? Like, how can I better support them now that I've got this spaciousness? Like, the kind of the more, not that I'm saying that like having career goals and like striving for stuff from a career perspective is like shallow. Absolutely not. And I think it depends on, who you are as a person in the career that you're in. But it feels like there's a much bigger opportunity now for me to like be somebody that I want to be and show up in the world without attaching all of it to a revenue goal and the number of clients through the door, and having that like constant loop of like stress and high cortisol and anxiety. The other thing that my coach was talking to me about, which is really, really relevant, is just because mentally you've now got spaciousness, it doesn't mean that your body isn't holding on to all of the stuff that you've, held on to for the last few years, all of that stress and anxiety and like striving. So actually, what are the ways that I can look to try and release that? Like, for instance, I've been in a flotation tank a couple of times. I think that's something that I'm going to look to do again. We're going away to Greece this month, so I'm going to have a chat with my husband about like relinquishing some of the control, because I can be very in my masculine in that sense, and using that holiday as an actual recharge rather than just fun times. And also daily, like, what can I be doing to physically support my body, not just relaxing in the sense of like reading a book or watching TV, but actually like releasing some of that energy, because as I've said so many times before, and the amazing book by the same title, The Body Keeps the Score. And if you're not looking at ways that, like, if you've had maybe like you've gone through a period of grief, or you've been caring for somebody, or you're a mother of young children, or you've had your own business, you've gone through any sort of tough time or like trauma or stress, your body doesn't automatically release that just because your mind does, just because you get to a better place. And actually, that's why we often see people when they've like had a period of stress and then gone on holiday, becoming really ill, or, they've had a period of stress and then they've come out the other side of it, and they suddenly, they get ill and the body just goes down. It goes into kind of like release mode, but it's releasing all of the trauma and the stress and the anxiety that you've been holding on to. And it's going to come out some way if you don't process it and you don't release it kind of healthily. So things like flotation tanks, things like sound baths, Reiki, maybe not necessarily in a group setting, because I did a sound bath the other week and I had the worst anxiety the day after, like horrendous anxiety. And I think that was partially to do with my hormones, but partially to do with the fact that it was like a group setting and there was a lot of people, a sense, going through like quite challenging times in that room, and you do absorb that energy. So anything that you can do to release, like dance, fascia work. I don't know if you know about sort of the fascia, but the fascia is the system that holds together all of the body's like muscles, and it holds on to a lot of trauma, a lot of emotion. So you have to do work to release that once you've released it from kind of like a mindset perspective. So all of that stuff is so great for like releasing, and I'm definitely going to be focusing on that, because the last thing I want is to come to a better place and in my mind be like on great form and then get sick because my body's still holding on to all this stuff. So if you've recognized anything of yourself in this episode, like if you feel a bit burned out, a bit disconnected, if you feel like you are going through something, if you've got signs of stress, anxiety, things like tight jaw, sore neck, sore back or joints, if you're struggling to sleep, if you are being snappy, irritable, people have commented, these are all signs that you are really holding on to like stress and anxiety and going through something. And sometimes there's a reason, sometimes there's a trigger. You can't always help that if it's like grief, or you are, in a period of your life where you just know that this is going to be testing you, parenthood with young kids, for instance. But I think, for me, recognizing that actually once I'd come out of it, that it was not actually a really good kind of period of my life. And whilst I'm super proud of myself for the business, and I'm super proud of everything that I achieved, I would do it very differently next time. And I would recognize those signs in myself and do something about it sooner, because now there's 3.5 years of kind of, that stress and anxiety to, I guess, kind of release and work on. But the realization alone has allowed me to do something about it, which is, amazing, because some people don't get to that. So I just thought I would share that, because I'm going through that at the moment, and it's, it's by no means at the end of the line with regards to releasing and sorting through everything. And I am looking forward to getting that kind of clarity on what it is that I want next in my life. And also sometimes, and I'm not the best at this, but I'm learning to be, it's okay just to not have goals for a while. Like my goal this August is just to really connect, really rest, really recharge, really enjoy the time away, and come back feeling rested, ready to go again. Because if you constantly set goals and tick them off and strive, that's great. And maybe you're somebody like me, you know, quite type A that enjoys that, but also don't forget that like it's okay to not want to do that sometimes, and it's okay to not have the answers, and it's okay to just be and see what comes out of it, because it's all a process, and part of that process is just being and just not continually striving, and that's kind of like where I'm at the moment. So I'm not sure when the next one will go out. I am away for the next release, but if I do get time, I will batch record and schedule so that I don't miss a week. But if I do, I'll see you on the flip side. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, make sure you are following the podcast, and don't forget to share episodes with a friend who may need it.